Hi. As the MC said, my name is Gil McGowan. I'm president of the Alberta Federation of Labor. And I'm here on behalf of our 29 unions in the public and private sector. But probably more importantly, I'm actually here because of this little guy. This is my son. And his name is Jack. Hello, Jack. Right place, Jack. And you know, I'm here because as a parent, I'm worried. I'm worried about the future for my son Jack, for his brother Ben and his sister Tessa, who are not here. But I'm also hopeful by what I see in front of me. Yeah. I'm worried that we've lost our way in terms of policy. I'm worried that we've lost our way in terms of the economy. But I'm hopeful because I see people waking up in places like New York and Washington, in Europe, and right here in places like Edmonton. Because people are realizing that we've got the calculus wrong. Because for years, we've been saying, how do we measure the success of an economy? And we know how people in the business pages measure it. We know how conservative politicians who support businesses measure it. They talk about investment, they talk about GDP growth, they talk about profits. But for me, the real measure of an economy's success is whether or not it's working for people.
Amen.
Yeah. So can you find a job that provides dignity and security? Can you afford a home for your family? Can you afford to set aside a little money so you could enroll your kids in hockey or soccer? Can you afford to take them on a vacation? Can you afford to set a little money aside for a dignified retirement? And you know, by the business community standards, by their definition of economic success, things are going roaringly, especially in places like Alberta. Profits are up. The wealthy are taking an ever-increasing share of that growing pie. Investment is pouring into this province. But by the definition that really matters about whether the economy is working for people, then I'd say that we're failing and failing miserably. Because we see the housing prices in a place like Alberta, Calgary, Edmonton going through the roof, and that middle class dream, which is not too much to ask for, you know, that middle class dream of a comfortable life for yourself and your family, that's becoming ever more elusive. And I think that, you know, in a lot of ways, we become victims of a worldview. We become victims of a paradigm for thinking which has held sway in our capitals in the Western world for coming on 40 years now. It's a paradigm for thinking that was cooked up by economists like Milton Friedman and taken across the world by politicians like Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and closer to home, people like Ralph Klein. And it's a worldview and a paradigm that lionizes the business class and demonizes the public and the community. It's a paradigm for thinking that says all taxes by definition are bad and that the only way forward is the unfettered market. Well, you know, brothers and sisters, we've had 40 years of life under this paradigm. We've had 40 years of this conservative right-wing experiment. And you know what we're seeing? We're seeing that the experiment has been an abject failure.
Amen.
And so that's why the labor movement in places like New York, in places like Los Angeles, in places like Berlin and London, the labor movement is coming out in force to support demonstrations like the ones being organized today in Edmonton and in places like Calgary as well. The labor movement recognizes that the system that we live in is broken. Right. And I can't tell you how excited we are to see that other people from all walks of life are starting to come to the same realization that we've had for a number of years, that the system is broken and needs to be fixed. So that's the challenge that we face. And I'm so pleased that we're facing it collectively, because collective solutions really are the only solution to the problems that we face.
Amen.
But you know, the challenge really that we face is one of facing what a famous economist, a Canadian economist named John Kenneth Galbraith, he talked about the conventional wisdom. You've all heard that phrase. And he said that the conventional wisdom is really not about wisdom, it's really about when thinking stops. And that's what's happened in Canada, the United States, and the rest of the Western world for the last 40 years. Thinking has stopped when it's come to how best to run our economy and our society. So these mantras about taxes, about the role of government, about the role of business, they haven't been questioned. And that's what's happening on the street today in Canada and across the world. People are starting to do what needs to be done to challenge the conventional wisdom and to take down those paradigms that have so failed us over the last number of years. Amen. And the way we do it is by questioning, by talking, by meeting, by offering alternatives. And then you know what you hear? You hear a rumble. And that rumble is paradigms falling. That rumble is the sound of world news crumbling. And I just want to wrap up with a quote from a song that is near and dear to us in the labor movement. It's called Solidarity Forever. And at the end of the song, it says that we can bring a new world to life from the ashes of the old. And when I see groups like this, and I hear the things that are being said at microphones like this one, you know, here in Edmonton, across the country, that's what I hear. I hear the old world collapsing and a new one rising from the ashes of the old.